the young people who are watching this in high school right now, who just watched, the second Top Gun movie and have that same drive to do something like we saw the 1980s when we watched the 1986 Top Gun. I want to be that guy. I want to fly those machines. They go to their high school guidance counselor. They probably don't even have accurate information to give these people, which is what this podcast is all about. Yeah. What was I'm in high school. I'm in high school. I want to be a fighter pilot. What do I need to do?
Hi, welcome to the Pro Pilot Playbook podcast, where we give you the tips, tricks, and hacks to become pilots faster and cheaper. We've got an exciting episode today that we've been working on for, several months. We've even hinted on it in other podcasts that this was coming, but we've got a really, really special guest today. I know that the dream of flying for most of you, a lot of it starts when you see your first fighter jet as a child. And I think... or you've seen the movie Top Gun or whatever it is. But I would say, I'm throwing a gut out number out, but 90% of all pilots get their start in dreaming to fly by thinking of flying fighters. And today we've got a real live F-16 pilot on the podcast. Excited to talk to him. Sean, you put this together, so introduce Aaron for us.
Yeah. We have with us today Major Aaron Werner out of the South Dakota Air National Guard, F-16 pilot, F-16 flight instructor. Aaron and I have known each other for a few years now. Aaron is unique in the fact that not only was flying F-16s, but was also doing the same kind of job that Mike and I do as a guardist, a guard or reservist. You are... you're doing that part-time. So he was also managing and flying corporate jets. And when he wasn't available, I would come up and fly his jet on a contract basis. This happens a lot in the corporate world. But Aaron is going to be able to provide a unique perspective to any of you out there that are thinking about going the military route. And we're very happy to have him on with us today. And Mike, you're real quick, before I forget to say anything, you're right that 90% of the people probably got into this racket after not just seeing the fighter jet, but when you go to an air show, able to hear and feel the power of those machines. Man. And we got Aaron here who used to fly one of those machines. I say used to because you just recently retired from the Guard, correct?
Yes, sir. I sure did. So,
yeah. Well, why don't you give us the story, man? How'd you get into this? Were you one of the kids that always knew what they wanted to do? You wanted to be a pilot?
Yep, that's exactly it. I don't know where the interest came from. I just, ever since I was a little kid, was just always fascinated with aviation. But my family doesn't have an aviation background. I had a couple of grandparents that did some time in the military, but I don't know where it came from, but started playing with toys and then building plastic models and then radio controlled models, and then finally started flying. I think I was a senior in high school, did the EAA Young Eagles program, a couple different times, and always knew that I wanted to do something in aviation. It's probably middle.
Similar story we hear from a lot of people.
Yeah.
The model airplane thing is a reoccurring theme.
Oh yeah. I had about 40 of them.
Yeah, that's when I got out of it, obviously. But now I walked into a hobby store that I used to work at, and I had to buy one, so I bought a little Super Cub electric, and I can fly it in my backyard. And
Oh, so you had it so bad you actually worked in a hobby shop?
Oh yeah, I sure did. So
that's great.
I was just looking at this F-14, this E-Flight F-14. The wings actually sweep on it. It's got lights. It already comes installed. You can fly it in 2 hours. It's like $900. I'm like, man, how do I justify getting this?
I know it.
Yeah, I had the Great Plains 60 size gas powered F-14 that came out probably mid 90s. It mimic the Top Gun airplane.
Nice.
That's a ton of fun. So you grew up in Sioux Falls?
Yes, sir. Yep, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Born and raised there, and I'm still in the area. today. So that's one thing nice about the National Guard, whether it's Army or Air, is there's a lot of them that's probably close to a hometown, somebody's hometown, and I just happened to be lucky enough to have one in Sioux Falls, and they flew F-16s, and everything worked out.
Did you seek out a recruiter? Like, what was the first step? Did you?
Well, actually, I was going to say, one of the things about that is great about this podcast that I think is really given it the success it has is the information in our industry is changing so rapidly. The young people who are watching this in high school right now, who just watched, the second Top Gun movie and have that same drive to do something like we saw the 1980s when we watched the 1986 Top Gun. I want to be that guy. I want to fly those machines. They go to their high school guidance counselor. They probably don't even have accurate information to give these people, which is what this podcast is all about. Yeah. So I guess perfect, Mike. You were asking the right question, I think. Yeah. What was I'm in high school. Step? I'm in high school. I want to be a fighter pilot. What do I need to do?
Yeah. So just to back up a little bit, I think it was probably in middle school, and that's kind of when I decided I wanted to pursue the tactical aviation, fighter pilot route. And then I got into high school, sophomore, junior year, kind of looking forward. What am I going to do for college? And at that time, in the knowledge I had, most of all fighter pilots came out of one of the service academies. So I just kind of assumed that, that was the route that I was going to have to take. And
like West Point, Air Force Academy, that kind of thing.
Air Force Academy, Naval Academy. Yep, absolutely. So I got in touch with an advisor, graduate of the Air Force Academy, retired out of the Guard. Basically, the path that I kind of wanted. He started helping with the application process for the service academies, and they say, if you're going to apply for one, might as well apply for them all. I did visit the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy, and kind of decided that it was the Air Force Academy or nothing. You do need a congressional nomination to get into any of the service academies. Unfortunately, I received nominations for the Merchant Marine Academy and the Naval Academy. And
how do you get that? You have to get a congressman to write a letter?
Yep, yeah, you sure do. So it's part of the application process, and I had to go visit, the representatives of our state, and they reviewed my application. You write a letter of intent, all that stuff, and
so they kind of the congressman actually interviewed you.
I didn't actually meet with the congressman. It was their constituents, I guess, but they eventually got it, reviewed it, and then there's only, from my understanding, so many slots, per year per state, and I don't know all the details on that. But right. Bottom line is, I got 2 recommendations. It wasn't for the Air Force Academy, and they recommend, a lot of people don't get those the first time, but go to get a year of undergraduate school under your belt and reapply, and your chances are greatly increased. So that was kind of one of the first of many small setbacks. I was like, all right, well, what are my other options, or how do I, continue down this path? And my advisor is like, well,
because you wanted Air Force Academy.
Yeah, nothing against the Naval Academy. It's just
you didn't want to live on a boat.
The Air Force Academy is what I wanted to do, and then I was going to do everything I could to get there. So in the meantime, I asked him what to do, and he's like, well, the Air National Guard is an option for you. And I've heard of it, knew people that were in it, didn't really know anything more than that. But he set up a meeting with a recruiter in Sioux Falls, South Dakota Air National Guard. I walked in there. I was like, well, I want to fly. I realized that, you're not going to hire me to do that right now, but how do I get there? And they're like, well, first of all, we can get you enlisted in the unit, and there's a lot of benefits with that. So I enlisted in the avionics section essentially. So I worked on, all the aircraft avionics. They had a deal at the time where they paid half tuition for if you went to an in-state school. And it's turned out that South Dakota State University had an aviation program. They paid like the GI Bill. They had a kicker on top of that. So there's all these benefits. So I got to thinking, I was like, I could go to traditional school in my home state, go through an aviation program, because I knew I wanted to pursue a career in aviation, whether it's in the military, civilian, and there's always that risk that you're going to get medically DQ'd for the military or something like that. So I still wanted to have the civilian options open. So bottom line is, I signed up in avionics, a 6-year commitment, enrolled in South Dakota State University and in their aviation program, and went through all my basic training, my tech training, got back, and I went in to talk to the ops group commander at the time and introduced myself and said, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is my plan. I want to fly someday. What do you recommend, or what's the best path? And, we had a good conversation, and he said, yeah, I think you're on the right path, and getting into the unit, getting some military experience. Then the reason I chose avionics was obviously getting familiar with the jet. You're working on the aircraft every day, but you also after every flight, you meet with the pilots and debrief and talk about any discrepancies with the aircraft. So getting that face time with the pilots was huge as well. So that's kind of how I initially got my foot in the door, and I just kind of decided I wasn't going to do any of the academies. And like I said, I didn't until I went down and talked to the recruiter. I didn't even know that that was an option. Other options, there's OTS. So I guess let me back up again. But I enrolled in the aviation program at South Dakota State, and my advisor was a retired colonel, and there's an ROTC program up there as well. And I asked him, I was like, well, I'm in the Guard now. Like, do I join ROTC? Because you can get there through that program, as well, and get your school paid for and graduate as a second lieutenant, and then apply for, a slot and graduate pilot training. He's like, well, unfortunately, you can't do both. So it's one or the other. I elected to stick with the Guard and go down that path versus active duty. So.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you just mentioned the Guard versus active duty. So maybe explain to the listeners a little bit of the differences between, because every branch of the military has active duty, Guard, and reserve. And I'm not sure everybody understands the aspects of each one.
Yep. So I guess I'll talk more about the Guard. They kind of lump the Guard and reserve into kind of the same group. There are definitely some significant differences, but the bottom line is a Guard unit has a national mission and a state mission. So you can be activated by essentially the president to go overseas and do a mission over there, or you can be activated by the governor of, in my case, the state of South Dakota, which has happened. We had the real bad flooding kind of down in the Sioux City area, and the governor activated us to you basically deploy in your own state and get paid to address that particular emergency. With that being said, there's full-time Guards, so people that show up every day and work at the base and do their job, just like an active duty unit or squadron would. And there's also the majority of the Guard is made up of part-time Guardsmen. So for example, when I first enlisted, everybody's probably heard of 1 week a month, 2 weeks a year.
Sure.
And that's basically you're going to do one Guard drill per month, and it's usually the first weekend of the month. And then there's a 2-week camp. So essentially you go on orders for 2 weeks. It might be at your unit. It might be a temporary duty location. But that's kind of the commitment. And then if your unit gets activated, you're gonna go on a deployment. For example, I've been on 5 deployments, twice to Iraq, Jordan, Korea, and then Afghanistan was my last one. So the first 2 were as a maintainer, and the last 3 was as a pilot. So, and we can talk more about those later. But so backing up, basically, I go to college. That was kind of my full-time job. I do 1 week in a guard drill a month. Do my 2-week camp a year, and there's opportunities to work more, but that's kind of the minimum. The reserve, similar. Active duty, that's your full-time job. Like you're gonna, whatever you enlist in, or if you become a pilot, you kind of fill out a dream sheet, based on the aircraft that you get trained in. And there's specific bases for that aircraft. And then, the Air Force is going to put you where the need is. You're going to be there for, a few years, 3 to 4 years. And then at the end of those 3 or 4 years, you're going to transition to another base. Or you're going to move several times if you choose to do a full career. If you go through pilot training, it is a 10-year commitment. So you sign your life away for 10 years from the day you graduate pilot training. But and you can always obviously choose to stay longer. With the guard, it's still a 10-year commitment. However, you're not moving around. You're always going to be attached to that unit. And then backing up, so I said, there's full time and there's part time, and I actually did both on the enlisted side and the commission side. So that's kind of one of the benefits about the guard. It gives you that flexibility to have a civilian career outside of the guard, but then show up, and have a military career as well. So, for example, a lot of guys in the squadron when I kind of was getting out are airline pilots, and that's what they do full time. And then they show up and do their, get their sorties in for the month, and then go back to the airline job. So the 1 week a month, 2 weeks a year doesn't necessarily apply. Well, it doesn't apply to pilots, just because there's a lot of currencies that you have to maintain. So you're on an average month, you need 6 to 9 sorties a month to stay current.
Gotcha.
So
wow, that's more than I thought it would be.
So that equates to, if you're a part-timer, you're you're at the squadron usually a minimum of 3 days a month. It could be up to 5 days a month, just based on, when the winters roll in, there's a lot of weather cancellations and stuff. So, but if you don't get your sorties in, you go on a probationary period, and if you don't get them in again, now you got to go through a retraining syllabus, and you're not considered fully mission capable. So it's depending on what your civilian job is, it can be a juggling act of schedules, but right. At the same time, like you have the best of both worlds. You're not wearing the uniform every day, unless you want to do that, and then you can kind of fly airlines for your full-time job, and then on the weekends or a handful of days a month, you're flying a single seat fighter, which is a pretty unique opportunity. So
yeah. You go back to the airlines and make all your coworkers jealous.
So what is a sortie? Is that like a training mission?
It's just exactly, training mission. One takeoff, one landing. So most of the F-16, your sorties are average duration hour to hour and a half, depending on how the jets are configured, what training phase you're in. 1,600 hours. It doesn't sound like a lot of hours, but if you think about divide that by 1.5. I mean, that's a lot of reps,
A lot of flights. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is most of your hours training? I mean, is that like what of those hours? How what percentage of that is training?
Yeah, I mean, it's all training until you deploy.
Okay.
I mean, we do you do drop live weapons and things throughout the year, but as far as it's always a training environment.
Do you guys do like when there's sporting events and stuff? Do you do like patrols or anything like that? Or
Yep. So the F-16 is a multi-role fighter, and there's a ton of different missions that particular platform can do, which is one reason why it makes it such a challenging job, is because there's so much to learn, and like you'll constantly in a different training phase because you got to stay current on all the missions that the F-16 can do. So yeah, to answer your question, there's a mission called ACA, and it's basically an alert mission that was stood up after September 11th. The South Dakota National Guard actually owns an alert detachment out in California, where we have aircraft and pilots, basically on call 24/7, 365, similar to like a fire station.
yeah.
But yeah, in that mission, I mean, there's a lot involved in that, but one particular mission that I did, my most recent one, was when President Trump was out in Orange County. I set up a TFR, and they put myself and another pilot basically in a combat air patrol, just a hold essentially over LA, and we actually had to go intercept GA aircraft that didn't check the NOTAMs or didn't have situational awareness where the TFR was, and busted the TFR, and we had to go intercept them and
Oh wow.
get them out of the area. So I mean but yes, to answer your question, there are especially when there's VIP movements and stuff, there's usually a combat aircraft on station somewhere that's able to react. So
that's kind of interesting, Aaron, because some of our listeners are already in flight training and have learned the intercept procedures and all that kind of stuff. So what was the so they know what you're talking about here. They're listening to a guy that was on the other end of of it. What did
Yep.
did the guy acknowledge you were there? Did he follow the right procedures, or did it go down the way I'm imagining? The dummy got himself into this situation, probably too dumb to even know the procedures, or hopefully I'm wrong there.
yeah, it was and like going back to the training piece, like usually it's always training. Like, well, we do a lot of work with the Civil Air Patrol and in this particular ACA mission, doing intercepts. Because the minimum airspeed of an F-16, depending on how it's configured, is you're right around 200 knots.
Right.
And you're intercepting a 172 or 182, which is doing. So there's a lot of it's definitely something you need to practice, because there's a lot going on. But yeah, going back to that particular intercept, it was a Skyline 182, and one of our we were a two ship. I got called out in the intercept. My wingman was in the cap, and we have two radios, so especially in LA, class Bravo airspace, you're talking to LA Center, obviously, get clearance out of the cap, and we're at 20,000 feet. We got to go all the way down to 5,000 feet, so you got to go through lots of traffic. And the other radio, you're talking to the Western Air Defense Sector, and they're the ones that are committing you on the intercept. But one of our first and easiest procedures is to make a call on guard, 121.5, and me, flying the aircraft and talking to the center in WADS. I had my wingman. I was like, hey, why don't you give this guy a call on guard? Tail number, and he made the call on guard, and sure enough, the guy was monitoring guard. Like blew my mind that he was monitoring guard.
I would have never thought that.
The pilot responded and said, yeah, we just got intercepted by, an F-16 or whatnot. And I was talking to, I think, SoCal Approach at the time, and told me we made radio contact on guard. He's like, well, hey, just have him turn to a heading of, 180 and contact me on this frequency. And that was it, and he mentioned that the TFR wasn't active. And I was like, well, I'm not going to argue with you about it. It most definitely is. They want to committed a fighter to come intercept you if it wasn't there. But so that was
from the guy flying the F-16. I'm pretty sure it's active, buddy. Turn to heading.
Yeah. So we actually intercepted 3 aircraft that day. So that was the 182. There's a King Air going to Catalina. That was off frequency. I wasn't talking to the right person. I eventually got in touch with ATC, but my wingman, he actually had to intercept I think it was a decathlon or a Citabri or something out over the water. And we do this maneuver called a headbutt, where you basically fly in front of the aircraft, slightly below their flight path, so they don't hit the wake turbulence, and then basically you do a 90-degree turn right in front of them and try and get them to turn in a direction. And then sometimes we'll pop flares to get their attention and stuff. So, I mean, that would be one of the more, serious actions that we would take. But you
have to be careful with those flares on the Citabria. Those things are, they got that nylon or fabric coating on them.
Yeah. Wow. So we have very specific procedures that, we have to follow, because obviously we don't want to create a hazardous situation for either aircraft, but it's a very, very real mission, and definitely something that, you want to go back and check the NOTAMs and make sure you're doing where you're supposed to be, or not where you're not supposed to be, I guess. So,
gotcha.
So if an aircraft like that doesn't respond, you actually at some point can shoot them down. Is that,
or only if they're a threat, like you see them turning to a target, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Or
wow, that's crazy.
It's got to go. That authorization has to go well up the chain. But I mean, there are live missiles and live ammunition on those aircraft for that reason. It's highly unlikely depending on the situation. But yes, that is definitely. I mean, that's what we're there for. So.
So you get through. You got the okay to get into the guard in this flying position. What's next? Is it right to UPT, or you got to go to OCS first, or the officer school? I mean, because you're an enlisted guy at this point, right? And you get the okay. Right, yep. All right, yep. We're gonna do this. I mean, what happens then?
Yep. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about the application process. So I mean, it's definitely you're not a shoe-in by any means. You gotta apply for a pilot position, and that's usually done through, based on the unit. The recruiters, they're not really involved in that process much. So you got to talk to somebody within the operations group. But the typical application, and usually, if you get on that unit's website, there's a pilot application link and tells you about the process, but they're generally the same. You fill out an application. You need 3 letters of recommendation, college transcripts, and you can't apply until you have 90 credit hours of college. So basically after your junior year of college is when you can start applying for the process. You also have to take the AFOQT, which is the Air Force Officers Qualification Test, and it's a standardized test with, they got like a kind of like an ACT, SAT with, you got like a pilot nav section and verbal, and there's a couple other sections, but you got to take that test, and that gives you a score. And obviously the application process is very competitive, so you really need to study and get the best scores possible. Addition to that, you got to take I think the name's changed, but it was called BATS when I did. Or TBATS, test of basic aviation skills, and it's no kidding like a Pac-Man game. You got like a joystick, and you got like a gun sight on a screen, and you're you're flying the gun sight over the target, and it's basically scoring your hand-eye coordination.
Right.
And so you get the results of that test. If you have flight hours already, they take all that stuff and combine it into what they call an ASVAB score, I believe, and PCSM score, which it's essentially a number that they computed which determines how well you're going to do in pilot training. And so you can schedule these tests through your local MEP center, what have you, but that's kind of the application process. You get all that stuff together, submit it, and each unit, it depends on their needs, how many pilots they have and how many they need and how many are retiring, or so on and so forth. But usually, like my unit, for example, we would hold a pilot hiring board at least once a year, where we'd hire anywhere from 1 to 3 candidates based on the needs. So, and we get, I think, I was on a board here a couple of years ago, and I think we had over 100 applications. I believe we were only hiring one or two spots.
Wow.
And so we go through them all, and we try and involve the squadron, because it's very much a squadron decision. Because usually, whoever you hire, they're going to stick around for a while. So our unit, and this is kind of unit specific, but any applicants that were already members of the South Dakota Air National Guard were granted a interview. So that's kind of one of the pros of enlisting in the unit first. So you're kind of guaranteed interview. We take
right,
so
they
those
know you, they know who you are.
Yep.
There's no mystery. But
Yep.
that is interesting. I mean, I think it's no mystery to anybody that being a military pilot is a competitive process. I mean, it used to be, I mean, it's loosened up a little bit because military needs people, pretty much like everybody else does nowadays. But I mean, they used to only want perfect human specimens to fly those jets, and so it's already competitive, even going active duty. But what you're saying is the reserve and the guard is like crazy competitive. I mean, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it sure is. I mean, and another nice thing about the guard is if you get hired as a pilot for a guard unit, like you were going to fly whatever airframe that guard unit has. So, in my case, F-16s, but there's guard units with, KC-135s, there's guard units with F-35s, there's guard units with, Blackhawks. So, I mean,
but not only out of
nice
the competitiveness of the reserve and the guard, everybody wants the fighters. So you're like, the tippity top of the,
Man.
And what I'd recommend is, I was willing to do or go wherever I had to fly, a fighter. So I sent out a pilot application to every fighter unit in the U.S. And actually interviewed with several, including South Dakota, a couple different times before I was hired. So it's not uncommon for you not to get hired, on your first interview process, but your chances greatly increase, if you apply the next year and just improve yourself from the first year. But so backing up a little bit, out of all those applications they get, we'll take maybe a dozen that we want to interview. And usually those are the ones with the best test scores, may have some military background, may not. We've taken a mix of guys off the street, or guys that are enlisted, guys that are already commissioned, active duty, guard. I mean, it's kind of that really doesn't matter, but you definitely want to make yourself as competitive as possible. And then from those 12, our squadron would have a social gathering. So we'd bring in all the interviewees and go out to a local establishment. We had a kind of a hangar party time, and just it gives you a chance to meet the applicants face to face instead of just looking at them on paper. And you can kind of judge a person's character, after talking to them a little bit, especially if you get a few beers in them and stuff like that. The truth kind of reveals itself. So
Sure.
That's usually the night before, and then.
Are you saying fighter pilots drink beer? Is that what you're saying?
Most do, yes. So, yeah. So anyway, but yeah, then you go into your interview, and it's usually the ops group commander, squadron commander, and then there's usually one of the younger guys, and then a guy that's a guy like me, decent amount of experience, and it's pretty, it's formal and it's intimidating, obviously, especially for me, because it's something you wanted real bad. And,
right.
I knew everybody on my board already. But they try and make it, as informal as possible. They want you to be relaxed and enjoy it. But they ask you a handful of questions. Usually it's just like, hey, tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get here? Stuff like that. And they'll get in more in-depth questions, like, why should we hire you? And sometimes I get off the wall questions. Like I remember I interviewed in Great Falls, Montana, and they asked me, he's like, you're driving down the highway and a gopher runs out on the highway. It's like, do you swerve to miss the gopher, or do you run that thing over? And so it's you just gotta answer it truthfully. You don't think too much into it, but they're just trying to feel you out. But
right. They may be just seeing if you're going to take time to think about it.
Yeah, exactly. So they're looking at your bearing, and how well you can come up with an answer, and it's all sorts of things. But that's kind of how that process worked. They usually give you a call, if not the same day, maybe the day later, and offer you the position. And then from there, it's depending on the process was pretty quick for me, from the time I got hired, from the time I left for my first training course, just because I was already enlisted. I was already in the unit. But if you're a civilian, you're not in the unit, you got to get enlisted, and that takes a while, and nothing happens super fast with the military, unfortunately. So I got hired. So I interviewed in June 2008. I just graduated college, and then we actually had my second deployment to Iraq. Got back from that, then I had my training dates for the first program. So I was enlisted. Obviously, you got to be commissioned to be a pilot. So my first training course was AMS, Academy of Military Science, which is basically a basic training for officers. That has since changed. It's now called OTS, Officer Training School, and it's standardized Guard, Reserve, and Active Duty. So everybody goes. It's in Montgomery, Alabama. I think it's 8 or 10 week course. But that is the first step in the whole process after you on your way to becoming a pilot. So go through that. You graduate as a second lieutenant, and then after that you go through you go to undergraduate pilot training. There is a program called Initial Flight Training, IFS. It's in Pueblo, Colorado, and I don't know if it's required for the Guard, Reserve or not. I actually went through it, but it's basically a precursor to undergraduate pilot training. So they have you flying the DA-20. It's civilian contracted DOS aviation out of, like I said, Pueblo, Colorado. And it's basically taking it's basically a condensed private pilot program.
Gotcha.
It was an option.
Instead of UPT, usually you guys starting off in that T6. Well, now it's a T6. Used to be that little tweet thing, T30.
T37.
Yep. Yeah.
So, from what I understand, I think all active duty go through it. It was an option for me. I went just because I didn't have anything else going on, and there was a chance to get on orders and get paid. But it was actually the kind of proficiency advanced me through because I was a CFI already, and like I had more experience than some of the instructors there did. But that is potentially you might go through that course. And that's strictly just to weed out anyone that they don't think is fit for undergraduate pilot training. So, so from there, you get your UPT, so undergraduate pilot training. You get your dates and your location. There's a handful scattered throughout the U.S. A lot of them are in Texas or down south where the weather's nice. So I went through Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas. Started in April of 2009, so roughly 6 months or so after I graduated from or got my commission. And it's about 54-week program, and these numbers might have changed a little bit, but it's going to get should be pretty close. But yeah, 54 weeks. The first half is in the T6, the Texan 2, which replaced the T37, the Tweet. And
the big turboprop, the big single engine turboprop that's basically indestructible. But and it's got the glass bubble canopy on it, almost like the F-16 looking type of thing,
Exactly.
I don't know. Some of our students, just in case they're wondering what it is, you'll see them around as you're flying around.
Made by Beechcraft, and you start with the flow of UPT is academics, sims, flight line, and you do that for every phase of flight. So starting out with your contact phase, which is takeoffs, landings, aerobatics, and you go into your instrument phase, and then formation, and cross country, low level, all that stuff. So that's kind of one of the hardest parts about it is your academics. By the time you actually get in an airplane and fly what you've learned, you're already on to the next phase in academics and sims and stuff. So you're juggling, several different phases. You're flying contact, you're simming instruments, but your academics are formation flying. So there's, but it's an intense program. It's fun. I had a blast. You get real close with everybody in your class, and it's very much a team effort. But yeah, you fly that roughly for the first 6 months of UPT, roughly 120-ish hours, and then you go to the T38 if you're in a fighter bomber track. If you're in a heavy track, then you go to the T1, which is basically the Beach Jet, Beach 400. Fly the T38 for another 6 months. And then I guess one change now is like they actually give you your wings after you graduate the T6. Like when I went through, I didn't get winged until I was done with the T38. So before you go to the T38, you go to the Centrifuge, which is not a lot of fun, but they basically put you through a high G profile because obviously the T38 is very much it's a fighter trainer. It flies a lot like the F-16 as far as the speeds. And
right. It's subsonic. It's subsonic though, right?
No, it's supersonic.
Oh, the T-38 is? I didn't realize that. I always thought it was subsonic.
Doesn't it have some ridiculous roll rate too, like or something?
Yeah, it's it sure does, and it rolls so fast it'll actually get into a roll coupling type deal, which is one of the limitations that they teach you. So where
the ailerons will become ineffective because the wings are spinning so fast or something.
Yeah, it just starts to like roll on two axis, almost like a figure eight type deal.
Wow.
It rolls so fast. Yeah.
What about the acceleration during takeoff? Is the the F-16 has that massive single engine, but that T-38 has the smaller twin inline thrust. Is the acceleration similar on takeoff, or
Yep.
the F-16 got it beat?
I mean, the F-16, based on how it's configured, if it's cleaned off, or single external fuel tank or something, there's really nothing that compares to, nothing that compares to that acceleration. But I mean, the T-38, it's a smaller plane.
Sure.
It's got afterburners, so I mean, it's very, very similar
Gotcha.
in nature. So you go to the centrifuge, usually in your break between the two aircraft, come back, fly the T-38, and then you'll go through what they call IFF, which is Introduction to Fighter Fundamentals. And it's, I think, roughly a 4-week course. But now that you're winged, you know how to fly. You got wings on your chest. Now they're going to teach you how to turn the airplane into a weapon system, which ultimately that's what any fighter bomber aircraft is. It's a weapon system. So I'll teach you the basics of air-to-air, dogfighting, and then air-to-ground as well. There's no ordnance on the aircraft. The T-38 doesn't have any. Well, it's got some hard points, but nothing for weapons. So it's all built into the avionics systems. So you do that, graduate from that, and then now you go to what they call the B course, the basic course for the airframe that you're going to fly. Active duty. So I'm going to back up a little bit here and just talk about the difference between guard reserve and or active duty. So you're going through pilot training with there might be 1, 2, maybe 3 guard guys in your UPT class, but most of them are all active duty, and they don't know what they're going to fly yet. Right. So it's all based on, and that's one nice thing about the guard reserve is, like, you're going to go to an F-16 or F-15 or whatever your unit has. You still have to perform well. Like when I was going through, you had to be in the top 50% of your class to continue on the fighter track. And if you weren't, then they would retrack you to a heavy. But the active duty candidates, they're fighting tooth and nail, trying to do the best that they can. Because at the end of the day, or at the end of the course, you get ranked, top to bottom based on how well you did from academics, your test scores, once again, how well you did in an airplane, like your check ride scores, and then your flight commander recommendation, and then you get to the end of the course, and Mother Air Force spits out, hey, we need so many fighter pilots, so many tanker pilots, so many C-17, all the way down the line, and the guy at the top, everybody fills out a dream sheet. Like, this is my first, second, third, fourth, fifth choice, and go down the line. And usually the number 1 and or number 2 guy, gets what they want.
I actually got a question on that, Aaron. I've heard this, I was Air Force. I was enlisted. I got out in 99. I was aircrew life support / survival instructor at Ellsworth, just down the road from you there in Rapid City.
You bet.
And we had the B1s over there, and I was always asking these guys. At one point, I wanted to follow a similar footsteps to what you did. I was going to be active, though. I was going to stay active. But, I'd always heard at the end of UPT, it's also based on what slots come out. You could have been the best person they've come through UPT in the last 2 years, number 1, tippity top, better than your instructors at flying those machines. But the only thing they had on the list that month were C5 slots. Is that true?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. It's 100% true. Yep.
Yeah, that was discouraging to me in my 19-year-old head at the time, like the amount of effort to put in, and Anyway, sorry, I just to throw that question in there.
No, it's a very real scenario, and I mean the fighter community is hurting right now. So I mean I don't know what the drop nights are like now, but there's I think there's plenty of fighter slots out there.
Gotcha.
Right now, so but yeah, So, I mean, that's kind of one of the differences between, if you were to go ROTC or one of the academies and go through OTS and then get a UPT slot, like you're not going to know what you're flying until, shortly before you've completed UPT. Yeah. So anyway, you get in with all that. IFF's complete. Now you go to the basic course, and that's where you're going to fly your specific airframe, whether it's F-16, F-15, F-15E, F-35, what have you. I went through Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix. They since moved it to New Mexico. I'm drawing a blank on the base, but
I know
they moved
it was
to
Luke
White
when I was
Sands.
in. That's where all the F-16 guys.
Yep.
That was.
Yep. So now that's an F-35 training base now. So if you
Oh,
dropped F-35,
okay.
you'd be going there and learn how to fly the F-35. But the B course for me was about a year long. I think it was just under a year, but I spent a year in Phoenix. And basically you start and before that you go back to the Centrifuge, and now you do a F-16 specific profile.
Because the seat is inclined more, so you can feel the difference in the forces on the incline.
Yep. I mean, the seat in F-16 is reclined 30 degrees. But the F-16 is, the highest G airframe out there.
Oh, okay.
So they obviously, but before they sink all that money into putting you through the F-16 B course, they want to make sure that you can handle it. So they put you through a more intense G profile, which I'm not gonna lie, it's terrible.
So they put you in a machine that spins you around and makes you so dizzy. I mean, are you like throwing up?
They keep going till you pass out, right? I mean, they want to know where the limit is for you.
If you pass out, that's not what you want to do.
Right,
You'll go through academics. They talk about the physiology of the human body, and why you G-lock, how it happens, and then how to prevent it. And there's very specific techniques and what you do with your muscles and your lower body and your breathing technique and all this stuff.
I always thought the point was just like the altitude chamber, to actually take each of you to the point of passing out, so you have at least that experience of knowing where it's going to happen for you. That's not the way it works in a G situation like the altitude chamber.
So they start out and they want you to know what your resting G tolerance is, and basically you're just sitting in a chair. It's a slow progression. They start the centrifuge, and like when you start to get tunnel vision and light loss, then you call to knock it off essentially. And now you know what your resting G tolerance is. It's usually right around, I think mine was right around 5 Gs. But
where you start to saw the black coming in.
Yep.
That's without the G suit.
That's without the G suit, without doing any type of straining maneuver or what have you. But it's all based on body type. Tall, skinnier guys like me actually struggle the hardest, just because it's the distance from your head to your heart.
Sure.
The farther that distance is, the more difficult it is to keep that blood up there. But short, stockier guys or gals, they tend to do a little bit better. And the joke was, the unhealthy people, guys or people with high blood pressure and high cholesterol, they actually do the best because their blood pressure is so high.
Right.
But I ran track and cross country and kind of have my blood pressures on the lower side. So I mean, I gotta work pretty hard to stay conscious. So then it's not the type of deal where if you G-lock, you're done. But you're going to go through some more training, and they want to get you through it. But if you can't pass it, like unfortunately, that's the end of your fighter career right there.
So because that's no matter what apparatus you're wearing, the G suit, the techniques of the grunting and all that stuff they train you. Physiologically, there is no way not like training for a marathon. Physiologically, there's no way your body will ever get better at that situation, blacking out or redding out. Is
Right.
that correct?
Yep.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Unfortunately,
Well,
it's just some people aren't cut out for it. It's
Gotcha.
no fault of their own. It's just
Right.
the way it is.
Well, you came
so
from
how
the
common
factory.
is it you got a guy that's just a rock star? I mean, academically, he's flying awesome. I mean, he goes through all the hoops, the congressional stuff. I mean, and then he gets to that, man, and he's, passing out and throwing up all over himself, and he's done.
Yep.
Is that common?
I wouldn't say it's common, but actually, my experience. So I show up for my F-16 profile. So this is like the last box I have to check in order to get in the F-16, and so I'm nervous. I've been through it once, but I know this is you only hear horror stories about it, and I was like, this could be it for me. So you're trying to obviously push those thoughts out. But the first guy that got in, dude, he G-locks, like in like all the other students or whatnot. You're sitting in the room and they got screens up on the TV screens.
G-lock means passing out, right?
Yep. Yeah. Sorry, it's a gravitational loss of consciousness. So you're
okay. Gotcha.
Your brain basically loses oxygen. It does a restart. You lose consciousness, and you come back. But when you're flying a single seat fighter, and that happens, obviously the results are fatal.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we're all sitting there watching, and yeah, sure enough, dude, he G-locks, and we all kind of look at each other like, dude, and he was a big guy, muscular, just a guy that looking at him be like, yeah, dude, this guy's gonna be fine, and sure enough, it's like, but anyway, he just I don't know what path. I think he had to stay another day, and like I said, they try and get you through it, and I think it was more. It wasn't his, physical body. It was just he had a bad technique. It wasn't squeezing all his lower body muscles and his breathing technique. I mean, most of the time, that's what it is. And what they're trying to teach is, when you start feeling G's come on, you do this. They call it the AGSM, and the anti-G straining maneuver. But so when you start to feel G's come on, like you start doing it as second nature, just like breathing and blinking and all that stuff you don't think about. Like you just do it, and that you got to have the right technique and do it correctly.
I got you.
But the centrifuge, you don't wear a G suit, and you don't get the pressurized breathing through the mask like you do in the jets. So I mean, it's as realistic as it can be, but it's not. You're spinning around in a circle. So in the carriage, when it starts, it kind of swings up, and so you get the fluid in your ear. It makes you, I don't know. It wasn't a fun experience.
So here you are. You're nervous to begin with. You got all this on the line, and then the guy in front of you passes out. You're like, oh.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah. So, but it ended up being, going well, and made it through, and
good.
Never looked back. So
is there a recurrent on that? Because I know
after that,
as you get older, you can't tolerate that as well, right? So is there like a recurrent, like when you're in your late 30s or something?
Nope. I haven't been back. I don't remember that. It was probably 2010. I probably did that, and I never. It's not a recurrent item, which they kind of.
Good. Yeah.
After you kind of make it through that, and if you make it through your B course and stuff, and they just kind of assume that you're good to go. You do have to. There is an altitude chamber recurrency. I think it's 5 years or whatnot. So we'd have to.
I know that changes as you age.
Yeah, for sure. So, but yeah, then you go through the B course, and you basically start all over again, just like UPT. Start doing contact, how to take off and land, and then you do. Obviously, it's a weapon system, so now you go through an air phase, and which there's multiple phases. BFM, basic fighting maneuvers, offensive, defensive, high aspect. And you get into your air to ground rides, so your basic, surface attack. You're dropping, just little 25-pound practice dun bombs. shooting the gun, and you kind of combined both the air-to-air and air-to-ground into a missionized ride. So that's kind of you get to the end of the course. Now you may or may not have weapons. You can simulate everything in the jet, but you basically fight your way into a target area. And you're shooting missiles on the way in, cleaning up their picture, and then you get into your target area and you drop your bombs, whether they're laser guided bombs, GPS guided bombs, whatever, and then fight your way back out. So that's kind of honestly what the F-16 is designed to do. It's more of a bomb dropper, a striker than an air-to-air platform, but we do have that capability. So you get done with all that, and then graduate, and you go back to your home unit, and guess what? You start all over again. They go through what they call an MQT syllabus, mission qualification training, and you're flying with an instructor pilot in your squadron. A guy like me, start all over. Start doing. Start out with air to air, doing basic fighter maneuvers. Basically the same thing you just did in the B course. Now you do it all over again, and you can pass the ride, you can fail the ride. The ride can be incomplete because the jet has a malfunction. You got to come back, or there's weather, whatnot. But you get to the end of that syllabus, and now you're a fully mission qualified combat F-16 pilot, meaning you're able to deploy to combat zone and do the mission, which is a pretty cool deal, pretty big deal. But I mean, that whole process is from the time I left to get my commission to the time I got back to my squadron was about 3 years.
Wow, man.
When you left, just the commission and the training, 3 years. But then you had joined the Guard, enlisted in the Guard, which means going in the military without college, somebody right out of high school. You did that. How long were you enlisted before this happened?
Yeah, so I was enlisted 6 years.
How much?
So I enlisted
6 years?
6 years I spent enlisted, yep. So
all right, so you did a full 20.
Yep, had about 20 and a half years is what I ended up with when I retired last summer. So
gotcha. So it was 3 years from the time you got the commission on all the way through all the UPT, the specific training. Okay, so this is I got you. That's very why they want the 10 years out of you.
Exactly. Yep. They dump millions of dollars into each UPT student, and it's a big commitment. So
gotcha.
But it goes by so fast. I mean, it's just all a blur. Yeah, I mean, and it was a blast. I mean, you get to your days, the week would just fly by, and the weekends you'd go out and let loose with all your classmates, and Sundays rest and recovery, and then back at it. I mean, I can't believe how fast it went.
Yeah, right. I bet you got some great friends from that, right?
Still. Oh yeah, it's I still keep in touch with a lot of them, and a lot of them that were in my class, they're getting into command now. So there's a lot of them are squadron commanders now, and which is cool to see. And one difference with active duty and Guard Reserve is like you can promote about the same, but like I said, my peers that I went through, they're in command positions now, like where like if I was still in, I would not be. Like the turnover is so much slower in the Guard. So, it until somebody retires or moves up, then it affects the whole chain. You know what I mean? So, I mean, if I was still in, I probably wouldn't be in a command position. Matter of fact, guys that are my squadron mates that were, 2, 3, 4 years ahead of me, they're just now getting into command positions. So, I guess that's one of the differences of active duty and Guard Reserve.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
the whole military buddy thing. That's real. I mean, I got out of the Air Force in '99, and there's 5 or 6 guys I still regularly communicate with. We're on a group text, we'll send each other a funny
Oh, yeah.
meme or have a phone call on some random, Saturday night, have a beer together on the phone, whatever. That's the real thing. That'll be there forever. And that is something
Absolutely. Yep.
with military camaraderie for sure.
Yep.
Especially tactical aviation. I mean, it's the brotherhood you develop, and
Sure.
like what it comes down to is, when you're in combat, you're trusting the guy or gal on your wing to, with your life, and you're trusting them that they're going to do the right thing and say the right thing, and they're relying on you to do that. And the bond that it makes is it's hard to describe, and it's just a very, very special, unique group to be a part of. And honestly, that's what I miss the most after I retired is probably that aspect of it. Not so much flying the jet, but it's just that camaraderie and
Sure.
brotherhood. So it's very
So
very unique, very
I
special.
look at your story, Aaron. I mean, I mean, the luck. I mean, it's like you're sprinkled in Elvis dust with this luck of getting a fighter in your hometown in the Guard. And I don't know. I mean,
Wow.
I've heard like professional sports players, like NFL guys and Major League Baseball guys, they get asked the question by the parent of some young child, my kid wants to be a professional baseball player. What should he do? And their response, I've heard this from more than one of these pro athletes, is tell them to forget about it. I mean, I'm here because it was dumb luck. I could have I should not be here. This is whatever. This is not something to pursue.
Let me say something first. I can tell by talking to this guy, though, he's highly intelligent.
I know. But what I'm saying is, I guess here's the actual question I have for you, Aaron. Knowing what you know now, seeing the whole picture, all the gears, that are working the clock behind the face.
Right.
Do you think that you would have went a different way? For the listener listening to this, like, what is that path realistic, or should somebody that wants to be a fighter pilot try to go the active duty route and maybe go to college or seek to go to the academy first? Like, what would be the most logical, try to get in the academy or go to college, do ROTC? Because most folks think I'll go talk to a recruiter, but a recruiter is there to fill the enlisted ranks for the most part.
Exactly. They're salesmen. Yep, for sure. To answer your first question, I'd absolutely do it all over again in the route that I took and worked out for me. Like, I mean, I have no complaints, no regrets. But yeah, like you said, I'm just very fortunate to have a fighter unit in my hometown that I, got to see both the enlisted side and then the commission side, and it just, everything worked out, better than I ever could have imagined it would have, So I guess what I'd recommend is, I mean, it's absolutely a possibility. It's a long process, as you can see. It's not for everyone. Enlisting into the unit or a unit is, maybe not an option for some. Maybe they don't want to do it. Not a good fit. But I mean, there's still other options. Like I said, we've hired civilians right off the street from out of the area. So I mean, that's definitely a possibility. But I mean, you gotta be competitive as possible, and make yourself look as good as you can on paper. And in addition to that, it helps to visit or rush the unit. So there'd be guard drill weekends where I remember showing up and there'd be all these people, young 20s in civilian clothes just wandering around, and they're rushing the unit. They have applied or they're going to apply, and they're just trying to put a face with a name. And some of them are coming from a long ways away, spending a lot of money on airline tickets and hotels and travel to show up And but I mean, I'm telling you right now that's what it takes. Like that's kind of what the game has turned into.
What would you say?
I mean, if
yeah,
what's that?
What would you say? Obviously, luck was part of this, but the harder you work, the luckier you get, I believe.
Sure.
So, but how would you say how from somebody watching this, there's a perception, and you come across as highly intelligent, and I'm sure the viewers are thinking that too. That fighter pilots have to be extremely intelligent, like above average of a normal person. So for the average guy that's watching this podcast, that maybe he's driving his truck right now, maybe he's in high school, and he's an average student, C's and B's, and he's thinking, I really want to do this, but I'm not as smart as this guy talking. I'm not a straight A student, and maybe not just you personally, but it can guys rise up if they really want it. Is it more your academics in your mind, or is it more your drive and your these guys like you're saying that are flying in and spending their own money to hang out at the base and be with? What is a more important component, do you think?
Yeah, I'd definitely say, like, I'm not the smartest guy out there. I was definitely not a straight A student. I think high school I was 3.2 maybe GPA. I got into college where I was actually doing something that I wanted to do, and I was a 3.5 was my GPA in college. My test scores were, as a matter of fact, that going back to that AFOQT test, and I'm not a good test taker. Standardized tests, I never really did that well. And actually, the first time I took it, I didn't even meet the minimum for the verbal score. I think the minimum was like 15 for the verbal, and I missed it. Like I failed the verbal portion. I mean, my pilot nav scores were like 99 or whatnot, but and I was obviously super embarrassed, and obviously I was like, I mean, I can't even pass the first test. Like, how am I gonna, can I even do this?
Right.
So you had the option to retake that test, and I did get an interview that year, and they told me after the fact, they're like, that was, you had one of the best interviews that we've seen. Unfortunately, we can't hire you because your test scores aren't, or your one section of the one test isn't passing, so they couldn't like legally hire me, and like that was a huge punch in the gut.
Sure.
To know that I had it perform, everything else was there, but this one stupid verbal portion of the AFOQT. Went back, retook the test, fixed the score. I don't know what happened, but I did much better the second time around. Interviewed the next year, and they were only taking one, and I didn't get it again. And I didn't think I was guaranteed the slot, but I was like, well, based on the feedback I got from last year, and I've improved myself over the course of this year, more flying hours, better test scores, this and that, and I didn't get it again. And it came down to, there was somebody that was just a little bit better than me, and there was only one slot, and so I, again,
Mm-hmm.
You haven't failed till you stop trying.
Kind of
like that.
Yep. And then so it was actually the third year that I applied. I was like, well, I mean, it's either, and at this point I'd started looking at OTS. I'd applied for OTS, and I interviewed with, like I said, Great Falls, Montana, Madison, Wisconsin, Duluth, Minnesota, and I actually had the alternate slot up in Duluth. So, and kind of what they told me when I left was like, hey, we're choosing you as the alternate. Traditionally, the alternate will, we still want you to apply and interview next, the following year, but usually, all things being equal, that's the person that will get selected and go to training the following year. So I kind of had that locked down in my back pocket. And I told them that in the interview, and I think that definitely helped me.
That helps, yeah.
Because they knew me, they like me, and when I say they like, the pilots and ops and stuff like that, I think they're kind of like, well, hey, if you don't get this guy now, then
right.
he's gonna he's going to leave us, which is, I mean, honestly, that's not a bad deal either. One thing about the guard is you can jump around units. I know people that have gotten the guard, they've gone and done a 3-4 year active duty stint, came back to the guard. Guys that have gone from our unit flying F-16s, switched units down in Florida flying F-22s. So I mean, once you're in, there's a lot of options, a lot of possibilities. Even if you go active duty, there's what they call a palace chase option, where you can leave active duty before your 10-year commitment and then finish it out in the guard. And then, like a lot of guys we actually hired several pilots that were born and grew up in the Sioux Falls area, that went out and either went through the academy or OTS, ROTC, got a fighter slot, active duty, and then did active duty, and then they come to the guard and they finish out their retirement years, in the same area that they grew up in. So I mean, that's definitely an option too.
Gotcha. But back to the whole easiest route thing. The guy that's in high school right now watching this, who's like, I want to be a fighter pilot. I don't care if I spend 15 of my 20 years living in a tent in the desert, as long as I'm working. Yeah. My job is flying a fighter. What's his easiest route? That's Academy, then ROTC. I mean, what do you recommend?
Probably your I dare say, shoe-in route, but would probably be ROTC.
ROTC. So go to college. Yeah, explain what that is to folks.
So our ROTC, it's honestly, I couldn't even tell you what it stands for, but basically,
I'm not sure either.
Yeah, and but most colleges have it, and it's basically a college with military curriculum mixed in. And when you graduate, and usually they'll cover 100% of your tuition. So I mean, it's costing you $0. And when you graduate college, you graduate as a commissioned second lieutenant. So you have that done already, and then you have the option of applying for a UPT slot, which the guys that I've talked to are going down that route. It sounds like, as long as you're an average student, you don't have, you didn't get any trouble, you kept your nose clean and stuff like that, you're probably going to get a UPT slot. Especially now, there's a pilot shortage, not only civilian wise, but military wise as well.
So you think those guys would get in even before an academy guy wanting to go to UPT?
Well, like academy, it's the same thing. Like they got to apply for UPT as well.
Right, but I mean, as far you got a ROTC and an academy, it's just hard to get into the academy. You're saying it's going to be more likely that you would end up in that ROTC route. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, like the academy, like I said, it's a
very
competitive process, and like I didn't get in my first time, so I mean, but ROTC is to my knowledge open to pretty much everyone. So, but I mean, I like the route I took. I would do it all over again. I'd recommend it to anyone. So if there's, guys or gals out there that are, have a guard unit that's close, they have an airframe that they want to fly, I would go talk to a recruiter for sure and just see what the benefits are right now. Because I mean, I think the benefits have actually got better as far as tuition assistance and a GI Bill and like the kicker. I don't know if that's still, there's a lot of sign-on bonuses right now for different areas that are hurting. But I mean, for example, like I was going to college and I was making about $1,000 a month between, I would guard drill Saturday, Sunday, once a month. And I got a GI Bill, which was, I think it's like $350 a month, every month. And then I got a kicker, which is another 270 something. So you get all that, like I made $1,000 a month for essentially working 2 days, where, a lot of my friends and stuff that weren't in the guard, they had part-time jobs on the side. stuff like that. So I mean, that aspect alone to get you through college. I mean, whether you stay in or not, it was, I would recommend it
Right.
to anyone. So
And if they don't get accepted to UPT, the officers you're going to be an officer at that point, I guess. And I mean, you're going to have one of the better jobs in the military, something like a meteorologist or, some type of management position, basically, or a high-end technical type of position.
Yep. But I mean, yeah, I don't know anyone personally that did not get a UPT slot.
Oh,
that
nice.
really wanted. So, take that for whatever it's worth. But like I said, you go that route, you don't know what you're going to fly, and it's all based on performance. So, I mean, there is that risk as well. With the guard, you know what you're going to fly, but it's more competitive to get that slot to go to UPT. I have heard of a guy that I flew with in my squadron. He actually got selected to fly KC-135s out of Lincoln, Nebraska. They had a guard unit down there, and he was in UPT. I think still in the T6, and they had somebody that was in a fighter slot, wasn't doing well, and he was doing well, and he basically swapped. So nice. He went to UPT thinking he was going to fly KC-135s, and he was from that area, the Lincoln area.
And anyone watching doesn't know what the KC-135 is. This is a tanker. This is a refueler, and your whole mission, your whole career is to fly in a holding pattern while the fighter guys, you sit there and be jealous of the fighters coming up to get refueled while you're flying in circles all day.
So there are, some kind of one-off scenarios like that as well, but
what about the guy who ended up flying the KC-135? He's active duty. This is an active duty question, I guess. He's flying a KC-135. He's been doing it now for 8-10 years. Whatever. He's just tired of it. Can he put in for a fighter slot? Or if he did terrible at UPT way back then, is that going to follow him his whole career?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't make that fighter bomber track, which usually is the top 50% of a UPT class, then there's no
that follows you. You're done.
Yeah,
you're done. Okay,
you're done. So, we actually hired one guy. So he came off active duty. He was actually out at Ellsworth flying the B1, and he came to the guard, and we hired him and sent him through what they call it's basically an abbreviated transition training program on the F-16. So, he had flew bombers his entire career, got hired with the South Dakota National Guard, went through, the F-16 training program, and then now he flies F-16s for our squadron. So, I mean, but he made that fighter bomber cut in UPT.
Gotcha.
So, so that's also an option as well. It's not very common. I would say, but like I said, it depends on the needs of the unit, and like our unit is real big on hiring people that are kind of within the area or from the area, because there are guys and gals out there that will do anything they can just to get in a fighter, and they jump ship and go back to their home unit or a unit closer to them. And it's like, well, that's not really the point. We didn't really get.
Well, it takes a certain kind of person to like South Dakota, like that that terrain and that environment of South Dakota. I know
Oh
I
yeah.
was shocked growing up in Cincinnati, Ohio. My first winter in Ellsworth, where the air is so dry and cold. If you're not wearing a glove, your hand will freeze to the door handle of your car, and
Oh yeah.
breathing in through your nose on that cold air, and your sinuses freeze for the first time.
Yep.
I learned why the parkas have all that fuzzy stuff around the hood. It's to warm
Oh
the
yeah.
air in front of your face so you don't freeze your sinuses when you breathe through your nose.
Yep.
But yeah, that environment's not for everybody.
It's not. That's for sure. But most of the years is pretty pleasant to live there. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's you got to take that with the winters. That's for sure.
Mhm.
So, Aaron, you went through all of this training and extremely hyper competitive, and then you got into the F-16. You completed the training. You're flying the missions. So, actually flying the plane, because most pilots have never flown anything like that. I mean, was it everything that you thought it was? I mean, is the performance and the acceleration and the handling of that plane? I mean, are you smiling every day, even after 20 years of doing it?
Yeah, I mean, it's bottom line. It's a very amazing aircraft. It's very easy to fly for the most part. It can be tricky to land, just based on the speeds, and there's no thrust reversers, and you got to be pretty disciplined. But yeah, I mean, it's the visibility is outstanding. The power is obviously incredible. Just the platform itself, it's a multi-role fighter. They joke, it's the jack of all trades, but the master of none.
Yeah.
So I mean, but it is a very difficult job. And like I said, flying the aircraft is basically second nature. You know what I mean? It's a weapon system, and being a single seat fighter, like, you don't have anyone in the back seat to do anything for you. So I mean, you're from the time you light the afterburner to take off, the time you're rolling out on landing, it's like you're working. There's an autopilot, but it's got like altitude hold, and it'll follow a heading bug and maybe a steer point. But I mean, it's like you're hand flying all the approaches, instrument approaches. You take it off, you're running all these sensors. You have, you got a targeting pod, you got a radar. You have your electronic countermeasures systems. You're flying formation. You're talking on the radio, two different radios. Your weapon systems, like when you're employing weapons, like every weapon has different parameters that you have to be in before you shoot, whether it's an air missile, radar guided, heat-seeking missile, multitude of air-to-ground ordnance, GPS guided, laser guided, a combination of both, rockets, the gun. So I mean, there's just an incredible amount of information to know, and that's not including just your basic, general aircraft knowledge, like critical action procedures. And by the way, these aircraft are, over 20 years old. They have over 7,000 hours of time on them, and then things break. There's multiple malfunctions that you have to deal with.
Wow.
And all that factors into your mission planning too. So for example, like a day in the life of a fighter pilot, if you're on this, you'd probably fly 2 to 3 times per week. And I'm talking home station, a traditional week in the Guard. I'm not talking about a temporary duty location or deployed, except that's different. But 2 to 3 times a week, the schedule comes out, and you look how you're flying with, you see, what mission set you're doing. And if it's like an air to ground mission, one of our more complex missions, you're going to start mission planning the day before, figuring out, who you're flying with, what the mission is, what position are you flying, 1, 2, 3, or 4, what airspace you're going to, what are the airspace times, do you have a refueler? Like being in South Dakota, we have Sioux City that has KC-135s. We have Lincoln that has KC-135s. McConnell out of Kansas City has 135. So Wisconsin has one. So bottom line, we have tanker units everywhere. So most of our sorties will have access to a tanker, which is also good for part-timers, because then you can count 2 sorties in one flight, which is a good deal too. But anyway, you plan all this stuff, you pick targets, pick what your target area is, what weapon you want to train on for the day, and then you'll, depending on what position you're flying, like the flight lead is going to brief that mission. So that all took place the day before. The next day you show up, brief usually starts 7:20, 7:30 in the morning, depending on what's going on. The brief is usually an hour long, and you got all your flight mates in there. If it's an opposed ride and you have red air, other F-16s that are going to replicate adversaries that you're going to have to deal with, they're going to be in there. You'll do an initial cord briefing, just talk about who's going to be when and where and how to deconflict and all that stuff. So that takes about an hour and 10 minutes. Then you'll go get dressed, put all your flight support equipment on, G-suit, parachute harness, LPU, your life preserver deal if you got it. Go to the step desk, get a step brief from the supervisor of flying, who's got SA on the weather, airspace, aircraft status, any last minute changes to tanker fallout or whatever. He'll brief you. You go out to the jet, and usually step 45 minutes before takeoff. Go through all your ground checks and everything. Blast off, and like I said, go fly the sortie, like for Navy ground sortie. A mission like that, your hour and a half ish, usually less than 2 hour flight. Come back, land, go get undressed, you grab a bite to eat, and then we go back and start reviewing. Everything is recorded in the jet. Your HUD's recorded, your MFDs, your little TVs above your knees are recorded. And you can download, like the jet will record its maneuvers and stuff too, and you compare that with everybody else that's out there flying. So you can recreate the whole mission in 3D and play it back, in front of all the pilots. And so it takes a while to download all that stuff. You look at your shots, every bomb that you dropped, every missile you shot, you recheck it to make sure it was valid. And then you meet and debrief. And then you basically pick apart the entire sortie. You got your objectives on the board. You'll get to the end, you'll grade those, and you'll look and be like, well, did we meet our objective? Yes. If not, usually it's no, because they're just, there's usually an area of focus in the sortie that didn't go as planned. And just with this day and age, with everything being with limited resources and aircraft availability and all that stuff, like you really have to pick apart the entire sortie and gather all that information that you can, so you don't make it again on your next one.
Yeah.
So I know that whole process can take, it's usually at least an hour. But some of the more complex rides, and if it's an upgrade ride, you got a younger wingman in the sortie, it can take 3-4 hours. So wow. It's you take a full 10-hour day, and an hour and a half of that is flying the aircraft.
Unbelievable. I'm blown away by what you just said. Yeah. You brought that up at the beginning of the interview, saying you have 1,500 hours. Well, dude, that's right. Thousands and thousands of hours of debriefing and preparation and everything. Yep. It's insane. So you must, I've been flying for 20 plus years, and I'm blown away by what you just said. The amount. So when you go to flight safety for a type rating on a corporate jet, is this like
so easy? Yeah.
Well, we think it's easy too, but you must be like, this is a joke, guys. Literally just sign the paper.
And then you doing your corporate job now, when you just fly from Sioux City to Fort Lauderdale, sit for 4 hours and fly back, you must think this is, and you're getting paid for it. It's just like the easiest thing you've ever done in your life. So.
Yeah, it for sure is. And it's almost to the point where I have to fight complacency. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
because I'm used to doing all this stuff, and now I can actually sit there and look out the window. And but I mean, there's still, obviously, with today's aircraft, they're very advanced, and there's a lot of regulations out there. And like me being like, so I've flown single pilot my entire career, all 6,000 hours. I have, pretty much zero crew CRM type of experience, SIC type stuff. So, and that's kind of one of the, I like doing that because I take care of filing my own flight plans and fuel and aircraft maintenance. So like I do it all myself. Where I mean, that's kind of different with the airlines and whatnot. But I mean, that's what I've done my entire career, and just the foundation that flying a single seat fighter is really, it's made me just a really good corporate pilot, especially dealing with emergencies and stuff like that. Because you're used to dealing with that stuff by yourself, so you just I've been able to carry that stuff forward, and it's hard to explain everything I've learned over the course of my tactical aviation career, but it's definitely made me over prepared me for this.
Yeah, I don't think we actually said in the interview explicitly, we're going pretty long now, but yeah, so when you weren't flying, doing this for the Guard, you were, that's how we know each other. You were managing a Premier jet up there, which was one of my specialties, and you somehow found me, and I would come up and fly when you weren't available. But now you're full-blown aircraft management company. You say you have 3 aircraft you're managing now?
I have 5, actually. CJ4.
You have 3 Premiers, is what you were saying.
3 Premiers, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Nice.
So,
what'd you say? A CJ what?
CJ4.
Yeah, I'm flying one of those now too, myself.
Yep.
I'm liking it a lot better. That thing's going to be taking over the Premier market, I think.
Yeah, it's a very capable aircraft. Yes. You don't have all the issues you do with the Premiers, so
right.
And then in addition to that, obviously I fly and manage those 5, and then I have one guy that's kind of full-time, flies up the Premier and the TBM for me. I do use a contract guy, pretty regular guy out of Tulsa, and then there's a handful of aircraft that I fly on a contract basis too. Like for example, today, I'm in Dallas. I flew an M2 down here yesterday for just strictly as a contractor, and going back here this afternoon. So
I was just in McKinney 2 days ago.
Oh yeah,
spent the night down there, right where you're at. But
I've done so many initials in Dallas. When somebody asks if I've ever been there, I just say, yeah, I used to live there.
Yeah, exactly. So,
oh man, but, wow, what a story, man.
I don't know, Aaron. I don't know. I'm so jealous of that whole fighter. I remember that from when I was in the Air Force. The B-1 guys, they would sit there and talk about what they're going to do for 5 or 6 hours, go out and fly for an hour, and then come back and sit and talk about it for 3 or 4 more hours. I remember that was confusing to me. I was in flight training at the time, going over the Rapid City Regional Airport there and flying a Cessna.
Oh, yeah.
I remember thinking, why are these guys, what are they going to talk about? This is ridiculous. Just go fly.
Yep.
But the getting in an airplane like the F-16 and just being able to yank and bank and crank on that thing, knowing that I'm in a machine that will break me before I'm able to break it, is just
exactly.
Man, that would be so much fun.
The human is definitely the limiting factor,
right,
in that aircraft, and it's there's nothing like it. So. Yeah. But especially when you get into,
I know it can go Mach 2. What's the top speed that you've done? And have you done Mach 2?
No, I think the highest I ever got was 1.6.
At that speed, are you burning fuel like freaking crazy?
Yeah, I mean, you're always burning fuel like crazy compared to the jets we're flying, but it all depends on how the aircraft is configured. In a combat configured F-16 with external fuel tanks, targeting pod, ECM pod, a combination of air-to-air missiles and some sort of bombs, like you're limited to, I think, 550 knots and 0.95 Mach. So you can't even go supersonic. in that configuration. There's a button in the jet that you push that, it drops all that stuff off. And, if you were to get in a dogfight with bombs on, you would hit that button, and now the aircraft is more maneuverable. But
yeah, how much time you got without those external tanks? I mean, that thing doesn't look like it holds any fuel without those big ass tanks attached to the wings.
Yeah, I mean, you got about 7,000 pounds, so about 1,000 gallons internal. And the centerline tank is 300 gallons, and that's good for.
So at full og, that's gone. You can't. You probably don't even want to touch that afterburner. With
nope.
You don't. Yeah.
What's the fuel burn with the afterburner on?
You're in South Dakota. You're about 55,000 pounds per hour.
Jesus Christ!
So, to put that in perspective, the jets Mike and I fly are about 2,000 pounds an hour, and you just said 55,000 pounds.
That's when you're
more
doing
fuel than the average human burns in their car in 10 years, I would think.
Exactly. Yep.
When you're doing Mach 1.6, what altitude are you at?
So that was down in Key West.
Nice.
And I was right at the top of the airspace. I was like at 49,990 feet. Like I said, we don't get to do that stuff very often, but I was a Red Air, so I was replicating one of our Chinese or Soviet adversaries and stuff like that. So I was called a high fast flyer, and I was at the back of the airspace, and I was like, well, that was high as I could go. And I was like, we'll see how fast I can go. And I mean, up there, honestly, the jet does not fly very well. The air's so thin. You got these little stubby wings. The engine it's got a lot of thrust, but I mean, you're not very tactical up there. But right. I just lit the afterburner and accelerated, then got to, I think, 1.6 Mach before we knocked it off for something. But it's funny because my wingman, he was like a low striker, so he was probably around 1,000 feet above the water, and I was at damn near 50,000 feet. And I said in the radio, I was like, hey, you're 6.9 miles below me. Right. So it was kind of one of those deals you get to.
Aaron,
you have a little fun.
I think I already know the answer to this question. I'm just trying to think of things that I just came up with this one. Thinking of things our viewers, if they were on here, would want to ask you. And I think I got one here. When you watched the movie, Top Gun, Top Gun 2, Iron Eagle, you watch these movies, fighter jet. Well, let's just stick with Top Gun 2 because I think they tried to do that as good as they could.
Yep.
You watch that and you're like, oh yeah, this is badass. Or you watch it and you're like, this thing's all bullshit.
The first Top Gun is hard to watch, just coming from that career field, but if you were to make a movie how an actual mission goes, like, it would be boring.
It would be too boring to watch.
Nobody would want to watch it. You're not going to, we never fly that close. We're always in a tactical formation. But I thought the second Top Gun was actually, like, the scenario was actually what I thought a pretty realistic scenario, which I could see, a squadron getting tasked to do, with the surface to air missiles and low level ingress and basically a pop attack, delivering a laser guided bomb with a buddy lays type delivery. So there's definitely some stuff that's far fetched in fiction, but
like stealing the old F-14.
Yeah. All that was that kind of made me chuckle and stuff. But it's that's definitely something I could see a training to, which I'm all about the realisticness of stuff like that, and I thought it was put together pretty well.
See, right. I thought they would come up with a way if it was real life. I like all the low level stuff, through the canyon and whatnot, but I just figured we would use a different weapon system to take out the SAMs on the ridges, and then we could do whatever we wanted to, take this thing out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
But this is a movie about jet pilots and jet airplanes, so they're not going to make the movie like that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
good.
you bet.
All right. Well, we've been on. Mike, you got anything else for him? I mean, we've been on here a while.
I was thinking the Top Gun question, so that's great. No,
you were?
honestly, I could talk another hour, but
Yeah,
really,
very interesting.
It's just, I can't thank you enough. I'm sure the viewers are going to get just a lot out of this. Everybody dreams of being a fighter pilot. You've kind of laid out the path and showed what it takes, and I'm very interested in some of the things that you talked about and how it applies to corporate aviation. So by all means, thank you, Aaron, for coming on. I mean, this is very valuable.
Yeah, just amazing stuff. Real quick, I've been asking every one of our guests that we've had, not that we've had a whole bunch, but if you had, one piece of advice you could give somebody, maybe they're not even really chasing down being a fighter pilot. Maybe they just want to be a pilot, that aspiring aviator, that kid in school right now, the kid that just took his third flight lesson, from everything you've been through, your experience in this industry, you got any advice you would give a young person wanting to chase this thing down?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, you just got to work for it. Like there's no easy outs. There's no shortcuts. It's it's a grind, and it's something that like I prepared for years, with, obviously setbacks. I talked about some of them. What I didn't talk about was I actually broke my leg like pretty bad snowmobiling from the time I commissioned in November to the time I left for pilot training in April.
Oof, so you're thinking, great, I got here and now I blew it,
Yeah, I was like, I did all this work. I got a slot. I'm supposed to leave in a couple months, and like I'm laying on the operating table with my bone sticking out of my leg, and just like, well, there's got to be a way through this, and I'll do whatever I have to do to get through it, and make the best of it. And it turned out not to really be an issue, but it's just you just got to work for it, and it's tough. But the good news is there's a lot of resources out there. People that have done it like me, people that are in the process of doing it right now. And like I was just an information sponge. Like I just scoured the internet. I talked to everybody that I could about. I remember going to an air show, in Offutt when I was a young kid, and the Blue Angels were there. And that's the first time I, had seen them. But I talked to, and they had F-15 on static display. And I remember talking to him about, not like how fast it can go. Like it was more like, how do I get to be you? Like that's the approach that I took. That's how bad I wanted it. And so, I mean, and I'm not the greatest pilot out there. I'm definitely not the smartest. I mean, that was one thing about the career is I've been humbled so many times by people that are better pilots than me or smarter than me. But at the same time, it's like, well, I got to get better, and it made me a better aviator as well. So I'm not God's gift to flying by any means. Like I just wanted it more than anybody else did, and and here I am. So, and I did it, and I do it all over again. And it's easy to give up at certain points of time, but you just got to ask yourself how bad you want it. And you get to this point in your career, and you're going to look back, and it doesn't matter. You're going to tell yourself it was worth it. Every bit of it. So,
yeah,
I guess that's
great advice.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, great advice. Thank you, Aaron, so much for doing this.
Yeah. Thank you guys. I think what you're doing is
people are going to like this. People are going to get value from this. This is awesome.
Yeah. I'm good. I'm glad I could help. And that's kind of where, I'm at in my career is, how I can give back to the aviation community, because a lot of people reached out and did a lot of great things for me and helped me along the way. And
that's exactly why this platform exists right now. We're all talking on. Mike and I felt the same way. It's why we created the Pro Pilot Playbook.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Great idea. Great program. And I'm anxious to see where he goes for you guys.
All right.
Yep.
Well, thank you for joining us, folks. We'll be back next week with another one. Leave comments, like, share, subscribe, and get to the airport. Start flying.